At UCLA Live the night after George Bush was re-elected president in 2004, I saw a production of Sarah Kane's 448 Psychosis. And it was really the perfect thing to see at that moment, partly because I was astonished at what had just happened. And Sarah Kane somehow, I think everybody in the audience felt it. I mean, there was a palpable sense of this was the right meditation to have at that point in time. And for me, at that time, if not earlier, there was definitely a sense that the country that I had grown up in and that had formed my sensibility had just crossed some kind of line. And that there was not going to be any going back to the comfortable certainties and the sense of easy privilege that really defined American culture in the post-war era. And that sense has only grown, and I think everybody understands that. You know, that as dire as things may seem today, you know, there's some serious challenges down the road. A little later, I was in Poland at the Grotowski Festival, 2009, and David Septon, who had brought, now he's no longer at UCLA Live, but he had brought Sarah Kane's production to LA, and he had done actually a very good job bringing interesting theater here, I think. You know, he was just an outspoken Brit, and he just said, at some point he just sort of unleashed the idea or the observation. It's amazing to me that anyone in the United States tries to do theater at all because there's no money. And it was completely obvious, and also, you know, we were a bunch of theater artists there, and it just kind of, I mean, it was just a statement of what's different about America from the rest of the world in many ways in terms of how the arts are valued. And it started me thinking about that and what it is about the American DNA that makes art so threatening. And I think, you know, it really, for those of us who are engaged in this, it makes sense to be clear about it, that from the very beginning, America has been defined by a kind of pragmatic attitude that actually has a religious aspect to it, and that the whole intention was to create a paradise here on earth, right? And so America is just predisposed towards questions that have answers and problems that can be solved, and art is all about the opposite. It's about questions that don't have easy answers and problems that can't, in fact, be solved. And I just sort of throw that out there because there's so much to say about the issues John raised, so I'll keep this brief. But one of the things that I think defines the approach to theater and the writing of text, because I think a lot of what happens in American theater is that, you know, there's a tendency to keep real resources away from texts that are really transformatively alive now. And so really gifted and talented directors are steered towards classics, and this may be a debatable point, but I think one of the reasons why theater is so threatening is that if you write truthfully about one thing, it actually sheds light on everything else because of the way everything is sort of interwoven. And so there is I mean, I'm just tossing that out there. I recently saw the Herzog film, which is a somewhat boring film, but some beautiful stuff in it. Cave of Forgotten Dreams, you know, which is about the earliest cave paintings from 30,000 years ago. And it turns out that these beautiful panels were actually the backdrop for ceremonial performances. And what that underscored for me, and also there in the same region, there are all sorts of Neanderthal sites that have no evidence of, you know, there's no painting, there's nothing. So clearly, like, creative work is very close to what it is to be human. And I think theater, more even as much so as painting. The other thing that was remarkable about this is that there's a set of paintings, and then there's the second set is 5,000 years later, which to me, you could fit the entire arc of civilization from the cities on the Euphrates to today inside those two episodes of a similar activity, a ceremonial activity. And I just throw that out there, to underscore how essential the work we do is, in fact, even if this sort of corporate monstrosity chooses to ignore it. I'm very curious about what those performances were like, and I want to imagine what the next performance in that series would be if you went back 5,000 years. And to think about a performance like that taking place in this space is intriguing to me. It also reminds me of a play I saw in this space 20 years ago, when I had just moved from New York. I was probably with Wes at the time. There was a large, hairless man with a white python wrapped around his torso, tormenting another man who had come to sell him live rats. And I was smiling because I had just come from New York and I thought I was going to see this kind of work. And the sound cue cut out, and a large man in the front row exited, cursing and slamming the door. It wasn't that door, but it was right over there. So that was 20 years ago. That was John's play. And 20 years before that, Murray, I think, just to go back 20-year increments, was probably somewhere around there, was accepting an Obie for the deer kill in New York. And this was the off-Broadway movement, the end of the off-Broadway movement, which was a time when really the paradigm of how theater is produced in the United States to this day was set. And with the nonprofit model that John talked about was sort of brought in as a way of giving structure, you would think, to this activity and allowing artists to do all these sorts of things. And I do think that it was fundamentally flawed, and that that model is an expression of the subtle hostility that I'm talking about to art, and that it really does need to be rethought, that it's really not a viable model. And to close, I like to say, give me patrons. Give me people who come and see the work and like what they see and deliver the funds. And let's change the model, because this idea of blind submissions and panels and boards of directors and all this stuff, I think it's fundamentally flawed. I don't think it serves its stated intention of supporting the arts. And in fact, I think it's an insidious kind of portrayal of that intention. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Can you explain why you did that?
Well, I just did. I mean, I think it's very indirect. I think it's an invitation to a kind of institutionalization, which is antithetical to the creative act, which I think is always, a very direct communication between one sensibility and an audience. And I think
the audience was that was funny than the audience. Where did that?
Well, I mean, we're just talking about funding. So, I would just like, the people who are interested in funding the arts to form a direct relationship to the work that they want to cultivate. And this idea that, we can talk about this a lot, but this idea that, we can avoid distorting that process by setting up a blind submission system, or it just doesn't work that way. It's patronage anyway, but it gets very indirect, I think. But it's a very good question.
Yeah, and I should have said up front, we're going to probably go through the panel. Some of them have to leave early, so we're going to let them mostly speak, and then we'll have a lot of time to